What's up, nerds? It's your boy, the OG GM, coming to you live once again. I'm back on a beautiful, yucky, foggy, gloomy May 1st, Monday morning. It is the first day of May. It's May, the lusty month of May, 2023. It's about 8 o'clock in the morning. And you can look out the window and see it's a lovely, oh, wait, no. It is another horrible, gloomy day here where I live. Hopefully you're getting spring where you live. And speaking of spring, let us spring into this week's list of tabletop role-playing game bundles, charity things, and freebies. That's right. It's time for bundles. Bundles. Yeah, what's up? And as always, here's my 3 warnings. 1, unless I specifically say otherwise, these are just going to be digital PDFs. 2, when downloading a PDF, please make sure, especially since some of these are computer programs, to check it for viruses and check it for malware. And 3, in regards to the charities like the Owen K. Steffens medical bill bundles, maybe just give the money to the charity directly, unless you absolutely have to have every game in the bundle. Because that way, if you give the money directly to the charity, 100% of everything you give goes directly to the charity. You don't have to deal with a middleman. So if there's a charity out there you want to support, like Primetime Sports Camp or me, just give the money directly. That said, other than the Owen K. Steffens bundles, nothing really stands out to me this week. The theme this week seems to be science fiction, maybe because it's the anniversary of Return of the Jedi. So right off, you can see we have a lot of Shadowrun stuff this week. Yeah, so let's go. Over in the freebies, over at Drive-Thru, we have Fast Jack Shadow Files, a collection of all the known authors and commentators from throughout Shadowrun's history in a massive 247-page file. So it's a source book about the source books, done in forums and pirate bulletin boards and basically anything anybody's ever written about Shadowrun that's not game related, it sounds like. So basically, if you want to see, I think it's sort of like a digital history of Shadowrun by through bulletin boards and forums, and basically sort of a documentary on the history of Shadowrun. So if you're interested in the Shadowrun history, check this out. This actually sounds kind of cool. Like if this was a book, I'd read it. And speaking of Cthulhu, I know I didn't, but Modifius has released some more Octung Cthulhu stuff. This week we've got Assault on Zorro 2, where your team of Octung Cthulhu investigators are sent to investigate a crashed aircraft. And speaking of Cthulhu and all things dark and gloomy, there's a collection of Free League stuff up for the what's the name of their thing? Vasen, yes, a collection for Vasen titled Spirits and Musters of the Mythic Ukraine. So this is a 80-page bundle featuring all sorts of creatures and cryptids and legends and mythology from Ukraine. This is not a charity bundle. This is just some guys who wanted to collect the verbal history of the folklore of the Ukraine and convert it over to Vasen. Monkey Paw Games is bringing us an Ashcan edition of Intruders, a retro clone of the 1974 edition of the world's most recognizable role-playing game. So it's another OSR, OSE, OGL retro clone of Dungeons and Dragons. How many retro clones, OGLs, do we need? I mean, I love a good D&D retro clone OGL as much as the next guy, but I think currently we're going on over 2,000 out there, maybe a lot more. And, you know, as much as I want each and every independent publisher to be successful out there and keep the love of Dungeons and Dragons alive, at some point we're just going to release retro clone overflow, and people are just going to not be able to tell the difference. I mean, what's the this one and this one? But I understand, you know, everybody wants to make their own game. Riley, just Riley has released a science fiction horror game called In the Blind Partial Transmission, inspired by the retro sci-fi of the 70s and 80s with CRT monitors, mechanical keyboards, junction boxes, and wires. So aliens, I guess. Early aliens and early retro sci-fi of the 70s and 80s. based upon Blades in the Dark. So another Space Wants to Kill You type of game. The Explorers Guild has released a system-agnostic one-page adventure called Love Languages. Valentine's Day is past, guys. It's where you take one of those we think player characters want to be baristas adventures, where you're going to be delivery guys for a prince trying to get into a ball to see their beloved person. So it's Cinderella. It's, yeah, I don't know why people think this is what people want to play, but I guess it's what people want to play. So who am I? Maybe just, maybe it's actually a fun thing. Roll for Combat released Battle Zoo Otherworlds, a supplement that allows you to Iasaki yourself into a fantasy game by providing rules to create yourself as a gamer with knowledge of the game that has been drawn into the fantasy world. It's both for 5th edition and Pathfinder 2nd edition. So if you're a fan of all those Iasaki, I'm a normal guy who has a normal skill, but in this fantasy world, that skill makes me a god. And for some reason, because of that, a whole bunch of people fall in love with me, but I don't want to have a sex with any of them. Iasaki brand of anime that is so huge right now. Here's a guy who's tried to convert it to a D20 type thing. Ludus Callus brings us a book of historical technology converted to 20th century D&D type gaming called Using Fairies in Role-Playing Games. It's a discussion of how to use fairies and what sort of craft they would be used in, and to capture them and to integrate fairies into any fantasy game. So I'm not sure what that has to do with technology, unless the technology is taking fairies and using them to create machines, like, plugging a generator into the fairy because it's generating so much energy, which actually sounds kind of dark. And yes, I know I have a doctor's appointment today. You don't need to remind me every 5 minutes. Dear fucking God. How do I stop these people from calling me? More report junk. Yeah. More Cthulhu. The Lovecraft Society has researched the SRD of the Open Cthulhu mythos with game stats originally designed for the German language version and translated to English for Cthulhu Eternal and Apaka Cthulhu RPG. The SRD includes 40 Lovecraftian entities, 21 rituals, 8 artifacts, 14 tomes, and 8 cults, all written by or associated with the works of H.P. Lovecraft. So more love for Cthulhu and more love for Call of Cthulhu. Why is there so much Cthulhu out there? Why is it so easy to... It's like when you don't have any other ideas for role-playing, just go Cthulhu, because Cthulhu is open source. Lovecraft never copyrighted Cthulhu. He allowed anybody who wanted to use his creation to use his creation or versions of his creation. I go into this discussion every Halloween. If you haven't followed my Halloween theme broadcasts in the past, Cthulhu is open source. So you right now, if you wanted to do a Cthulhu adjacent product for your favorite game of choice, you could, and there's no real legal thing stopping you, unless things have changed. And speaking of change, Pirate Borg still around, and apparently of all the Mork Borg retro clones and spin-offs, Pirate Borg is supposedly the best. I don't know. My kind of heart is sort of like on Mork Borg, but with dogs, because I just love that idea and I love the name. But so Thomas Erickson is doing some love for Pirate Borg by giving us a couple D100 random titles for it. We've got 100 things you could find on a deserted island, 100 things you might encounter in the Pirate Borg Sea, and 100 things you might find on a shipwreck. So random generation tables for your everyday Pirate Borg adventure. Yay, Pirate Borg, pirates, and the apocalypse. Now we move on to this week's list of stuff over at DM's Guild and Storyteller's Vault. We've got a new collection of magic items called the Shelf of Utility, featuring about 20 new magic items for your 5e game of choice. We also have another volume of magic items, this one coming to us from Timothy Lopez, called A Collection of Magic Items, Artifacts and Antiquities, Volume 1. It's a whole bunch of magic items converted to your favorite 5e system of choice, because there's more than one. We have some vampire love this week over on the Storyteller's Vault. We have a new source book called The Ivory Tower. This preview features new factions and predator types for the world of vampire, because nothing says spring like vampire. And speaking of vampire, Tatiana Varasux, Versieux, brings us Night Edge, a collection of 31 new discipline powers for Vampire the Masquerade. Because again, nothing says spring like vampires. And speaking of vampires, we have some love for Kindred of the East, the Oriental vampire supplement. This is called The Relentless Age. It's a source book to reintroduce the hungry dead into Vampire the Masquerade 20th anniversary edition. The 194-page supplement converts all the stuff that had been done for Kindred of the East over to the current Vampire the Masquerade 20th anniversary edition rules. Bleh. Coffee. More vampire love. I don't know why we're getting so much vampire love in May. What does spring have to do with vampires? Oh, I guess vampire, renewal, immortality, blood, the blood of Christ. Okay, maybe. Clan Salubri, Salubri, brings us up an expansion for Vampire the Masquerade called the Saulot's Legacy, Saulots. It's a supplement featuring more details on the clan, including disciplines and powers and other Vampire the Masquerade sheet. So if you're looking for some Vampire the Masquerade love, we've got 1, 2, 3, street clear, 4, 5 supplements for Vampire the Masquerade over at the Storyteller as well. And now, of course, this week's list of freebies on GM's Guild. So if you're ever interested in the weekly list of freebies, every week we have free maps, usually some free subclasses, and some new, occasionally free new races, all for 5e, all technically canon, but not really. So if you're going to use any of these, ask your GM to make sure he's going to allow them or she's going to allow them. And remember, all of this is going to change in a few months anyways. So anyways, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 new subclasses. And we have 1, 2 new maps. That's a kind of low week for maps, but whatever. And both the maps seem to be spaceship themed. So our big themes this week seem to be science fiction and vampires. And speaking of, moving on to this week's sale, Itch.io has a big sale of Mork Borg supplements, including 15 new adventures for Mork Borg. It's all going to a good cause. And that is, they says it's not precisely a charity bundle, but it is a bundle of Mork Borg things, a percentage of which will go to animal shelters in the author's area. So even though it's not listed under the charity section, it is technically a charity. So if you want to head over to Itch.io and buy a bundle of new Mork Borg love and support an animal shelter, it's $8. And if you want some more Mork Borg, Thomas Erickson brings us a new collection of Pirate Borg, new classes and stuff for the world of Pirate Borg. So if you're playing Pirate Borg, which supposedly, as I said earlier, is the best version of Mork Borg, here's some more Mork Borg, Pirate Borg, Dog Borg stuff. And it's $4. We've got some VTT maps from Episodic Maps. $21 gives you a whole bunch of science fiction maps, like medical facilities, biological experimentation labs. Isn't that the same thing? An asteroid lab kind of is med. These all just sort of sound like the exact same map, just with different names. Lab. So $21 for virtual DTT maps of labs. And then Episodic Maps has a second map collection of also spaceship-y type stuff with a collection of spaceships of various types for $16. So if you want some VTT maps for your VTT of choice that have a vaguely science fiction spaceship, space lab type theme, these are both up at the usual place. Drive-through. And now moving on to the charity bundles. And of course, we have the Owen K. Steffen's bundles. Owen K. Steffen, as you know, is a very prolific and well-respected member of the tabletop role-playing game community. He's worked on 5e, 13th Age, Eclipse Phase, Mutants and Masterminds. He's worked for Green Ronin, Wizards of the Coast, Paizo. He recently suffered a health scan. He acquired several large medical bills, as is the way of things here in the United States, and he is looking for help in paying them off. So there are 2 bundles currently running, both of them featuring about 20 to 100 products from various well-respected companies like, Wizards, Cobalt, Paizo, Green Ronin. These can both be found on either directly through Owen's site, which I have the link down below, or through Humble Bumble and DriveThru. So Humble Bumble is running it, DriveThru is running it, and you can also just get to it directly through Owen's site. So if you want to support a fellow gamer who is going through some trouble, 2 bundles, each running about $35, each featuring about 100 PDFs of various role-playing games out there. So yeah, or you could just go to Owen's page and donate directly. Another member of our tabletop role-playing game community who's sadly passed away is Keith Fry. He worked heavily on Traveler. If you ever have interest in finding out more of the history of the Traveler role-playing game, head on over to Shoner's page. He occasionally talks about Traveler. This is a $30 bundle. It goes to cover all the final medical expenses and funeral expenses for the family of Keith Fry. Our condolences to the family of Keith Fry, and all our best wishes to Owen to make it through this health scare. Moving on to non-related to people, Libra Gothica Games has a bundle featuring the tabletop fantasy game Fellowship. It is one player plays the overlord bent on world destruction, so the DM, and the other players form a coalition of heroes undertaking a perilous journey to save the day using rules based upon the Apocalypse Engine. So one player is the DM who's playing bad guys, and the other players are the players playing good guys. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books plus 5 playbooks, I guess modules, in this bundle. It's a $10 bundle, and the funds go directly to the creators of Fellowship. We have a bundle for game masters who are looking for idea generator cards from Nathan Rockwood. This is called Game Master Apprentice, and it's a $120 card deck that includes images and ideas for generating ideas, and it's $8, and it's direct relief, which means 10% goes to Nathan Rockwood. And so it's random idea generators, which you can find for free online. There is a Teeny D6 Mega Bundle from Gallant Knight Games. If you're interested in the Teeny D6 system, this appears to be pretty much everything core rules-wise that Gallant Knights has created for Teeny D6. So this includes Teeny Dungeon, Teeny Wasteland, Teeny Frontiers, Teeny Pirates, Teeny Gunslingers, Teeny Living Dead, Teeny Dungeons, Teeny Taverns, Mecha and Monsters, Teeny Cthulhu, Teeny Supers, which I got in a lot of trouble for reviewing, Teeny Spies, and a Gallant Verse campaign guide. So $20 gets you all that, and it's direct relief, which means 10% of that goes directly to the creators of Teeny D6 Gallant Games, and that can be found on Bundle of Holding. There is a 3rd edition bundle from Mongoose Classics. This is all the 3rd edition stuff they made back in the old days. About 256 things, including things with such amazing titles as Dragons, Encounters, Hell, Immortals, The Sea, Clerics. $10 is the for this bundle. It goes 10 direct relief, which means 10% of it will go directly to Mongoose. The rest goes, I don't know where, Magic. So yeah, back in the early days of the OGL, when everybody and their dog was making OGL product in the desperate attempt to get some of that Pathfinder love, Mongoose entered the fray, and they had this series of red little teeny splat books. Each one was dedicated to one idea or one thing. They're about 20 pages, 30 pages each. They usually ran about $11 to $16. You could always tell because they were bright red. And if you put them on the shelf, they totally stood out because all the other modules and expansions were dark colors, green, black, brown, off brown, gray, all, occasionally red and blue. But technically, the spines of role-playing books tend to run dark colors, so the names, which are always in bright colors, stand out. So you have a dark red, and it'll say Advanced Dungeons and Dragons on it, and it pops. These were bright red with black lettering, black italics. So you had black, 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 red, black, black, black. They're also one of those things that never moved. They sat on the shelves at Seth's for 20 years, pretty much to the day Seth's closed, and nobody bought them. So that sort of gives you an idea of just sort of how not great they were. But now you can get all of them for $10. So yeah, if you're looking for a bunch of 3rd edition love from Mongoose, there you go. And there's a little gaming history for you. And that is all for the bundles this week. If any of these stand out to you, head on over to Humble Bumble, Bundle of Holding, Drive-Thru, or GM's Guild and check them out. As always, remember these are PDFs unless I specifically say otherwise. If you're going to download any of these, please check them for viruses and malware before you install them. And in regards to the charity case, especially for our friend Owen, maybe just go to the pages directly and donate to the charity if there's a charity out there you want to support, like me, and give the money to them directly. And speaking of giving money directly, if you appreciate this content, let me know. If you don't appreciate this content and want to see something change, let me know. If you haven't subscribed to the OG GM Adventures yet, please take a moment to subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps me immensely. Help me reach 2,000 subs by the end of this year. And of course, don't forget that I have ways you can support me. I've got merch, I've got a Ko-Fi, I've got a Patreon, all sorts of new and fun ways to make sure the OGGM can continue doing this content that you love so much. That's it for all the bundles and freebies. We will now return to your regularly scheduled What Weird Stuff has Wizards of the Coast done this time. See ya!